Hello YouTube, in this episode about how to spot a fake natty, I'm going to tell you one simple way where you can tell if someone is taking PEDs or not based on their training. And that's very easy. You see, when I first started watching YouTube fitness, I realized one thing. I saw certain guys who were incredibly big, huge, jacked, and low percent body fat. And when I looked at the way they trained, I wasn't really impressed, meaning that there was a discrepancy between the way they looked and the way they performed. And at first, I tended to attribute that to just bodybuilding, right? Because it's that saying that, oh, bodybuilders, they're training for size. So they have a completely different training than powerlifters, they don't do compounds, it's normal. But the more I researched, the more I realized that this made no sense. Because I personally got my best results from compound movements. So I was asking myself, how come these guys get away from training like this? And then there was also the entire discussion around strength not equaling size. So it was a conundrum for me. But the more I researched, the more I looked around, and the more I consumed the training regimens of these fake naturals, the more I eventually realized one thing. Objectively speaking, their training is lazy and it's incorrect, and it shouldn't produce the results that they get. Which means what? It means that they get those results from another source. So before I go further, I need to explain what I mean by lazy, because lazy can mean many things. Some people would tell you that powerlifter training is lazy because they take a lot of rest between the sets. That's not what I mean by lazy. What I mean by lazy is that the intrinsic value of the workout, when you look at the stats, when you look at the quality of it, volume, intensity, frequency, the amount of tonnage they get, all of that is fairly low across the board, and it shouldn't result in the bodies they get. You see, when you compare the tonnage of someone who is on drugs to the tonnage of someone who's natural, you will notice that their tonnage isn't as high as you would think it is. Especially when you consider the fact that a lot of that tonnage takes place in completely irrelevant intensity windows, because they tend to do sets of 30 or 40 reps with baby weight. And what limits them is not the muscular failure, it's the pump, or it's the fact that their cardiovascular system is not able to actually follow. So the question is, if that type of tonnage is A, way too low, and B, not quality, why does it result in growth? And the answer is, steroids by themselves constitute tonnage. The very injection of these products creates growth, and that's been proven across the board. And so that's where this entire thing sort of ends. Because it's so easy to, from this point, from this objective statement, find people who are clearly fake naturals. People who are going to try and tell you that if you train like them, you'll get the results they get, but you never will. Why? Because you're missing the secret ingredient, the secret sauce, and that's the secret sauce that does everything. And then if you reverse engineer that, you also realize that they let themselves train lazily because they have that sauce. They know that what they actually do in the gym matters less than naturals, so they let themselves do something that is, on paper, not as intense, not as high volume, or at least not as much as they could handle. Because as you see and come to understand, those same people are going to try and tell you that, oh, steroids do nothing, and what they really do is they make you work harder. So people who take PEDs actually work harder. I personally have never experienced that with my own two eyes. Every time I go on one of those YouTube channels with a guy who's clearly on the juice, their training is something that I could do easily. And the only part of the training that is actually challenging is going to be, for the most part, the pump. Meaning that they took the pain of intensity, the pain of hard reps done within hard sets, and they replaced that with the pain of the pump. And they try and equate the two. Those are the people who will tell you, oh yeah, if mid-set it really burns, and oh, you feel like puking, that's a good set. That means nothing. You could have the flu, that could explain the nausea, that could explain why you want to puke. It's not an indicator of growth. But when you don't care about growth, because you know you're going to grow whatever happens, it doesn't matter. And because these people need something to show to their impressionable audience, they came up with that. It's false bravado. It's a lie. It's a farce. It's a fabrication. It's the simulation of hardship, if you will. They have to show you that facade, because if they didn't, you would really start questioning yourself. If they did, like the juicers from my old gym used to do, you would immediately see through the BS. And what do these guys used to do in my old gym? They would just hang out. They would come to the gym, huge, twice my size. They would do a few dumbbell curls, a few lateral raises, and then they would just sit around and talk to each other. They didn't try to hide the fact that they barely trained in the gym and that their training was lazy. Why? They had no one to impress. They didn't have an audience. But these guys do. They need to keep you on the hook, especially if they want to sell you something. If they want to sell you especially programs, there are magic programs that are going to make you twice the size, they need to make you believe that what they're doing is what is creating the size, not the products they're taking, because they're not drug dealers, you see, they're program sellers, and that is somehow better. But in reality, they would be better off just selling you the drugs, because that would actually get you the results you want. But I don't think that's what you want in terms of long-term health. So that's going to be that for this How to Spot a Fake Natty video. If you want to be able to tell exactly what a lazy training would be, you need to understand progression, you need to understand volume and intensity, all of which are described in length in the hypertrophy series. It's a playlist. That being said, I've already made one video where I explain somehow that a lot of the time fake naturals, you can spot them because their training programs make no sense. But even for that, you need to understand the concepts that would create the sense. And I'm going to leave you with that. If you see people who deny the importance of programming in terms of training and progression as a natural, chances are they're not natural. I'm going to leave you. Have a good day and have an excellent rest of your week.